Hi everyone, I'm Laura Hammock from the Marble Jar channel. I'm a YouTube newbie, so please be patient with the quality of my first batch of videos. I'm posting a series of videos from a workshop that I gave for the Women's Center in Vienna, Virginia. It was a reasonably long workshop, so I've cut it up into some smaller segments. At the beginning of every segment, I'm going to go over what will be covered so that you can go to the material that's relevant to you. Okay, let's get started. So first, let me briefly introduce myself. Again, my name is Laura Hammock. I have 2 kids. I was a product manager for a large international telecommunications firm before I had kids. And since then, I've worked part-time, but I've mostly focused on being a mom. I have a 15-year-old boy who's a freshman in high school, and I have a 13-year-old girl who is a 7th grader in middle school. They are both ADHD, which adds a layer of fun, impulsivity, and addictive tendencies to our household mix. You'll notice that I don't have any credentials aside from having a master's degree in management information systems, but I'm an involved mom and an avid researcher, and probably most importantly, I'm very interested in this topic. So the first thing I wanted to do was just situate ourselves in the history of the technology that we are experiencing right now. Sometimes it's good to just glance back and see how much has happened since our childhoods, and then compare that to what our kids are experiencing. So let's talk about some of these amazing technological advances that have happened within our lifetime. In 1981, that was the very first year that the IBM personal computer was introduced, and maybe you guys were familiar with the Commodore 64 or the VIC-20. I think it was called the VIC-20. Those were some of the earliest ones too. In 1984, Prodigy introduced online portals and online news. In 1995, so this is, a good 10 years later, consumer email came out. AOL, Prodigy, and CompuServe introduced consumer email. In 1996, we had some of our consumer web services, browsers like Internet Explorer and eBay and Amazon launched. Then in 1999, Wi-Fi was introduced, and Google. Up until then, you had to actually plug in to get internet access. It was 2004 when Facebook launched. YouTube started in 2005, Twitter in 2006. It was just 10 years ago that the iPhone was first introduced. And then there was a whole flurry of things that have happened since 2010. Snapchat, Tinder, Vine, Instagram, some of which, like Vine, isn't even in service anymore. Okay, now look at this timeline and think about the major milestones in your life. Like, when did you graduate from high school? When did you graduate from college? When did you get married? When did you have kids? So for me, everything occurred before the flurry of events at the end of this timeline. I graduated in 1989, and these were the sparse technical innovations during my childhood. And this is what my kids are experiencing. So life was really different for us growing up. We know that, but sometimes it's helped to see some visuals in order to orient us properly. Does this phone look familiar? We had one phone in my house growing up, so my childhood was a little oddball in a lot of ways. This wasn't necessarily the norm. But my friend had a Princess phone and her very own phone line to her room, and I thought that was incredibly decadent and privileged. Now, of course, every kid with an internet-connected device has their own phone line. Do you remember cameras like this and heavy video cameras that some parents would lug to sporting events? Now everyone has a camera and a video camera on them at all times, including our children. So what about music? We had records and tapes, and we spent hours taping songs off the radio and making mixtapes. And now, of course, you can stream any song from the internet immediately with pre-created, pre-selected song lists. Homework and research. Do you remember trips to the library, learning the Dewey Decimal System, and interacting with card catalogs? Now our kids can just use this. And what about games? Do these games look familiar? Pac-Man, Space Invaders, my personal favorite, Frogger. Up until a certain point in my childhood, you had to physically go to an arcade to play these games one quarter at a time. And here, of course, are today's video games, which might not look so different, but there are two main differences. Number one, ultra realism, and number two, ubiquity. They always have these games with them. So we spent time hanging out at the malls, going to friends' houses or fast food establishments, and obviously talking on the phone. Now our kids can hang out from the comfort of their own homes through texting, video chats, social media, and snaps. Remember this? We had one black and white television in our house with a faulty antenna. Now kids don't even understand what it means to wait for an episode. They're used to binge watching series from start to finish whenever and wherever they want. There used to be no real way to express emotion other than expressing emotion. When we were sad, we looked like this. Now kids can represent emotions by emoji. In summary, here was our childhood, and here's what our kids are experiencing. All that to say, things are different now. Not all bad, of course. But do we actually know what these things are doing to us as adults? Do we know how it's affecting our kids? Do we know how all of these technological advances are impacting our kids' brains, their development, their social skills, their relationships, their mental health? So in the next video in the series, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of technology. We're going to focus on the good that technology brings into our lives first. If you like this video, please be sure to click the like button and leave a comment to keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching.